Assalamu alaikum Nazreen, welcome to program State Affairs with Usama Khurshid. Today we will talk about the regional rivalry between the North Korea and South Korea in Korean Peninsula. In the last week, the leaders of the both states met in the summit and decided to put that rivalry to the end. Now, what triggered that thing in their minds to put the rivalry on the end, we will talk about this in our program. And what will be the future consequences on the world by ending this rivalry? What will be the response of the major powers for ending on the rivalry of the North Korea and South Korea? But before starting the program, let's shed the light on the points agreed by the Korean Peninsula rivals. First point was a commitment to a nuclear-free Korean Peninsula and an end to hostile activities between the two countries. Number 2 point was changing the demilitarized zone, which we know as a DMZ, into a peace zone, including ceasing propaganda broadcasts. Number 3 point was an arms reduction in the region pending the casing of military tension. Number 4 point was to push for four-way talks involving the US and China aimed at turning the armistice that ended the Korean War into a peace treaty. Number 5th point is organizing a reunion of families left divided by the war. Number 6th point is connecting and modernizing railways and roads across the border. And number 7th point is further joint participation in sporting events, including this year's Asian Games. So viewers, let me tell you that the two Koreans announced that they would work with the United States and China this year to declare an unofficial end of 1950s Korean War and seek an agreement to establishment permanent and solid peace in this place. The declaration includes promises to pursue phased military arms reduction, cease hostile acts, transform their fortified borders into a peace zone, as I've just told you, and seek multilateral talks with other countries, including the United States of America. But before that, let me show you the historic video, then we will talk about it. As you have seen this video, let me tell you that Kim became the first North Korean leader since the 1950 and 53 Korean War to set foot in the South Korea after shaking hands with his counterpart over a concrete curb marking the border in the heavily fortified demilitarized zone between the countries. Now viewers, let me tell you about the importance of the venue which you have just seen where they were shaking the hands. It is DMZ, known as the Demilitarized Zone, a 160-mile long, 2-mile wide strip of the land created in the 1953 armistice to serve as a buffer zone between the South and the North Korea. Now, as you have seen that Moon and Kim joking and walking together marked a striking contrast to last year's barrage of North Korean missile tests and its large ever nuclear test that led to sweeping international sanctions and fears on a fresh conflict of the Korean Peninsula. As part of efforts to reduce tension, the two sides agreed to open a liaison office, which is very important, and to stop the propaganda broadcast and leaflet drops along the borders, as it was the practice of the Koreans, and allow the Korean families divided by the borders to meet. That was a part of the agenda as we have just discussed. But what is intriguing and what just intrigued me is the biggest achievement of the deal is the denuclearization of this entire peninsula. Yes, you have heard me right. Just days before the summit, Kim said that North Korea would suspend nuclear and long-range missile tests and dismantle its only nuclear test site. But there was widespread skepticism. Although I'm also skeptic about the Kim move that whether he is ready to abandon the nuclear arsenal his country has defended and developed for decades as what it says is a necessary deterrent against the US invasion. Now, let me tell you that the United States is hopeful that talks will make progress on achieving peace and prosperity. Even the White House said in a statement as the two men began their summit, mostly in the months ago, Trump and Kim were trading threats and insults as the North made rapid advances in the pursuit of nuclear armed missiles capable of hitting the United States. Now, let me tell you that these threats were not merely in the United States, but moreover, the alarming issues in this whole fiasco is that South Korea is of the view that the issues of US troops stationed in the South is unrelated to the future peace territory with the North Korea and that American forces should stay even if such an agreement is signed. So, here the United States currently has around 28,500 troops stationed in the South Korea, which North Korea has long demanded to be removed as one of the conditions for giving up its nuclear and missile programs. But what happened actually between these states? How they changed their mind, how they changed their heart, and the presence of US troops have been stationed in South Korea since the Korean War, which ended in 1953. So now, if we go with the version of South Korea, they want the troops to stay because US forces in the South Korea play the role of mediator in military confrontations between the neighboring superpowers like China and Japan. Another intriguing thing is that Mr. Kim is supposed to meet Donald Trump in the next month. Now, the question arises in my mind is that how the US president will respond in that summit. Because in the past, as we have seen that Trump is always of the view that why the US is spending so much of its allies, especially South Korean military presence. Now, if we talk about the counterpart, the China is willing to continue playing a positive role to seek a political resolution for the North Korean peninsula. China is North Korea's most important economic and diplomatic backer. Despite Beijing's anger at the Pyongyang's repeated nuclear and missile tests and support for the strong United Nations sanctions against the North. However, China has also welcomed moves by the North Korea to improve ties with South Korea and the United States of America. Overall, in holistic approach on this whole quagmire, I have 4 things to share with you. Number 1, it's not the first time that the leaders of the North and South Korea have declared their hopes for peace, and 2 earlier summits back in 2000 and 2007, the previous North-South summits fitted as historic moments but only managed to achieve paper promises and phony progress. The 6-party talks, which includes the United States, the China, North, the South Korea, Japan and the Russia, they just achieved much of the same. So far, we have only words. And the matter of the fact is that all words have been previously spoken, including denuclearization and the willingness to give up the nukes if the United States promises not to invade Korea. But again, the intentions is a very fickle business. As the 6-party talks 2005 joint agreement, it says that the United States affirmed it. It has no intention to attack or invade North Korea with nuclear or conventional weapons, and North Korea committed to abandoning all nuclear weapons and existing nuclear program. Now let me tell you viewers that what's the big deal? What's the difference between the old things and the new things? The old rapprochement and the new rapprochement. As the caution remains the watchword with North Korea. There are reasons to believe this time that it could be different. Why? What's the reason? Let me tell you that the first President Donald Trump's addition brought a galvanizing force to the equation. Trump's fiery rhetoric and economic pressure have done much to bring Kim Jong-un to the table, and they also added urgency to the North Korean side. Indeed, the newest joint declaration clearly shows that South Korea's anxiousness about the increasing risk of war on the Korean peninsula. Now let me come on the second point. The second point which I have achieved is that perhaps even more important, because Kim raised the stakes by arriving as a nuclear power. His accusation of a viable nuclear threat, possibly as many as 60 nuclear weapons, and capability to deliver them over short, medium, and likely intercontinental distances. Now this gives him leverage that neither his father nor his grandfather possessed. The dynamics from 2000 and 2007 have fundamentally changed, and Kim's ability to extract meeting from South Korea's President Moon, China's President Xi Jinping, and even possibly a sitting President of the United States of evidence of Kim's new global stature. So, the fact that they are meeting with him or all is a concession, if not in their minds, then at least in his. Now, the third thing is that about the nuclear weapons. Yes, the big question is whether Kim is willing to give up the nuclear capabilities. Like seriously, his country acquired at such great cost. After enduring decades of economic depravity to obtain a credible nuclear threat, it's hard to imagine that Kim would simply let that go. No country in the history of the world has openly tested nuclear missiles and then given them under international pressure away. Sorry, it never happened. So, the South Africa appears to be the lone exception, but it only disarmed for domestic reasons, never openly tested its weapon, and there was little international pressure to disarm. Given the global community a totally failure in this regard, no North Korea expert, I know that thinks that North Korea will be the world's first country to surrender its cache. I hope it. Well, everyone involved would like to produce a grand bargain. But the triple constraint theory of a project management applies to international relations as well. Good, cheap, fast. You can pick only two. Any progress towards a strong, meaningful agreement is likely to happen in slow motion, and it will require costly concessions from each party. So, at best, these initial meetings will open longer negotiations toward the common goal of a Korean peninsula without nuclear weapons and with a lasting peace. Expecting anything more at this stage is likely to prove disappointing. So we will see that what really will work between these two countries. Either they will go for the summit, either Mr. Trump will go towards the positive acceleration between the relations of the North Korea and South Korea. If the Korean peninsula will be shortly not damaged by the nuclear weapons, there is the possibility that it will be damaged by the normal conventional warfare. But these achievements, we just hope that they will denuclearize the whole peninsula, and these both countries will become more rigorous towards their friendly relation. That's it for today. We'll see you in the next program. Just take care of yourself. Goodbye.